Hi, I'm Scott Wrighton. I serve as Decatur's City Manager, and every week you can click on this link or view this video, however you might access it, Facebook or some other methodology, to learn more about what's going on at the City of Decatur. At the last City Council meeting on the 20th of June, the City Council had a very full agenda. Now, a lot of it just had to do with the normal mechanism and apparatus of city government, but there's a few key things that the Mayor and Council acted on that I'd like to highlight for you. The first one, and probably the one that got the most media attention, is that the City Council passed a resolution unanimously designating an open space area in downtown Decatur as Preston Jackson Park. For some of us, we sort of called that Accidental Park for many years. It's also been called Decatur Plaza and some other different names. And the reason why it is sort of a park with no name is because it was never intended to be a park originally. The site is across the street to the west from the ADM City Center. And there were buildings there much earlier in Decatur's history, and they were torn down to make room for another economic development project that didn't happen. Instead, the ADM City Center project happened. And there was some expectation for a few years that there would be an economic development project there, and there was a hole in the ground for a while, and the city filled it in and then landscaped the park, and Preston Jackson provided some of his artwork that sits now in the center of the park, which is an amazing artistic rendering in a way that honors African Americans who served in the Union Army during the Civil War. And because that is such an excellent piece of artwork and it sits right in the center of that green space, the suggestion was that it could be named for him because not only is he a local person, grew up and born and raised in Decatur and went on to do great things, but is an artist of great renown. So the City Council, after studying more about it, doing the title work on it and learning more about Preston Jackson, was very pleased to make that designation, and that was approved on Monday night. Now, we haven't put up any signs yet or any other kind of memorial or any kind of designation of that. Now that the City Council has taken this action, the city will fabricate the appropriate way to designate that, and we're still thinking through what the appropriate design would be. And I imagine that sometime in the fall, the city will have a more formal dedication ceremony, and Preston Jackson himself has agreed to come to Decatur when that happens, and so we'll provide lots of advance notice for that. We're really excited, not only about having a good permanent name for this green space, but also letting it be a name that honors someone who has done so well and is a hometown guy. One of the other things that the City Council took action on at the Monday night meeting was a contract to make some major improvements to the second floor of the library building. Now, most of you all know where the Decatur Public Library building is. It's the old Sears building. It was built in 1968, and the Decatur Public Library occupies about 75% of the total space in that building, the entire lower level and about half of the upper level. The city owns the building and has not been able to make real productive space of that upper half of the second floor of the public library. And so beginning about a year and a half ago, the City Council decided, let's make sure that we use this space in a way that really helps advance the city's objective for workforce development, for employment and training, because that is as much a key part of neighborhood revitalization and community development as repairing homes is. People need jobs in order to maintain their homes and to maintain their residences and their neighborhoods. So the city has already allowed Project Read Plus to be in that space. We've located fairly recently an employee clinic, which will be expanded, which is already being expanded to include some other employers in the area. In addition to that, the offices of the Community Investment Corporation of Decatur, which is an arm of the city that provides assistance to small businesses, to startups, and to innovators. And we're also working on a contract with a local company called ThinkWell to have what's called a maker space in this area. And having all of those in the same place, along with Workforce Solutions, which is a state-funded agency that provides all sorts of job training, all in the same place at a library, is a synergistic combination that you'll not find anywhere else in Central Illinois. So we're really excited about this development, and this was just one piece of that that'll do some of the remodeling, put in some offices, build some classrooms, and so forth. So you'll be hearing more about that as all the pieces come together by the end of the year. One of the other actions that the City Council took had to do with the Jasper Street corridor. Jasper Street is one of the arterial streets that runs north and south in Decatur, runs all the way from South Shores Lakeshore Drive rather, all the way to Pershing Street on the north. And it goes through many different sorts of neighborhoods. It goes through residential neighborhoods, it goes through commercial neighborhoods, it has to go under a railroad viaduct, and way up in the north it's more industrial before you reach Pershing Street. And in some cases, the adjoining neighborhoods really have disbanded, or there's not somebody to work with. In other cases, there are neighborhoods for us to work with, especially on the south side, where our staff has worked with the South Side Improvement Association, as well as with Kono and other groups. But it's such a variety of land uses, and it certainly goes through the heart of what we would call our urban core and some of our distressed neighborhoods. And so this is a different strategy. Rather than doing rehab on a house-by-house basis, is to approach it as a corridor. And not just talking about what's in the public right-of-way. Yes, there might be improvements we need to make to street lighting or to curbs and gutters and sidewalks and make it more pedestrian friendly. But the corridor is much bigger than the right-of-way itself. It also includes the adjoining properties. There are sections of the Jasper Street corridor that have a lot of vacant parcels on them. Some of them the city owns, some of them the city does not. But through zoning and through this corridor analysis and bringing in the consultants who have a lot of track record and experience in connecting the city with key developers who can help us with that, and in helping build capacity with some of the neighborhood groups, we're approaching neighborhood revitalization and rehabilitation in a slightly different strategy, and that is what grows out from a rehabilitated corridor will usually be improved properties on several blocks on either side of that. It's a new strategy. We call it Great Streets. And if we're successful with the Jasper Street corridor, we'll look at other corridors, maybe Grand or Monroe or some other corridor. Probably not one of the corridors where there's a state highway route, where there's 121 or 48 or 51, because the state owns those, and which gives us much less flexibility to make changes to the right-of-way. So we'll probably be focusing more on arterial and collector streets that are not part of the state. But this will be our first one, and so we'll be excited to see how that all works out. I want to mention again, even though I mentioned it last week, that the City Council's initiative with regard to whether or not we should rehab and find some different uses for the Civic Center of Decatur is really primarily driven by the idea that if we don't have more activities, more up-to-date uses, and some modernization of the Civic Center, then the amount of subsidy that the city provides to the Civic Center Authority will keep increasing each year. The Civic Center Authority staff does a great job here at the Decatur Civic Center, maintaining it, keeping it clean, and hosting a large number of events. But there's still a significant percentage of the year when there's nothing going on here except the activities of city offices, which means that it's being underutilized and it's increasingly becoming sort of functionally obsolete. So with the assistance of a consultant who we brought on board just to analyze the highest and best use of the Civic Center moving forward, what the City Council is trying to be is visionary. Think about, okay, we've been through more than 40 years with the existing Civic Center design. How do we make some changes to the design so that it can be much more utilized, generate more revenue, and thereby reduce the amount of subsidy the taxpayers of Decatur have to pay? That's really the driving object behind some of the things that you might have heard in the media. What you've heard in terms of what might be put here are all just ideas. Nothing is fixed in stone yet. It'll depend on what kinds of developers we can attract to the Decatur market. I look forward to talking to you in the future about these and other projects. Thanks for tuning into the video this week.